Look up on any American street and you'll see them, a tangle of wooden poles, drooping wires, transformers bolted like afterthoughts against the sky. Every other wealthy nation buried these decades ago. America never did. And the reason goes back to a single era almost nobody talks about anymore. This is not a small quirk. In 2026, roughly 70% of American electricity distribution still travels on above-ground lines, while Germany, Japan, the UK, and South Korea have buried the overwhelming majority of theirs. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why and what it actually cost America to keep things this way. The story begins not with laziness or poverty, but with speed. In the 1880s and 1890s, American cities were electrifying faster than anywhere on Earth. Edison, Westinghouse, hundreds of competing companies, all stringing wire as fast as physically possible. Speed meant poles. Poles meant profit, immediately. By the 1890s, Manhattan's streets were so choked with wire that poles snapped under the weight. The blizzard of 1888 took down thousands of lines and killed people. City officials in New York actually ordered wires underground then, and it worked for New York. But the rest of the country watched and did nothing. Here's the first hidden term. It wasn't apathy that kept wires above ground everywhere else. It was structure. America had no national utility regulator. Every town, every county, every private company made its own call. And private companies had zero financial incentive to bury something that worked fine above ground. Meanwhile, Europe was doing something entirely different. After World War II, governments rebuilding bombed cities made a deliberate choice: underground utilities. It cost more upfront, but the infrastructure was state-owned, the debt was public, and the planning horizon was measured in generations, not quarterly earnings. But the real reason America's lines stayed up is stranger than that. And it involves something most people have never heard of: the rural electrification calculus of the 1930s. Stay with this, because it explains almost everything. In the 1930s, the Rural Electrification Administration wired up farms and small towns that had never had power. It was one of the great infrastructure achievements in American history, but it was done on the absolute cheapest possible model: wooden poles, overhead wire. The whole point was maximum reach at minimum cost. Those poles were designed to last 30 to 40 years. In 2026, a significant portion of America's rural grid is still running on infrastructure that descends directly from that era. Not the original wood, obviously, but the same above-ground model, the same rights of way, the same logic. It was never upgraded. Then came the suburbs. The post-1945 suburban explosion wired up millions of new homes at breakneck speed, using the same above-ground model. Levittown and 1,000 towns like it were platted with utility poles built in from day one. To change the model now would have meant renegotiating with hundreds of local utilities simultaneously. Nobody did. Cost is the number most often cited, and it is real. Burying a single mile of distribution line in an existing neighborhood costs between $1 and $3 million, roughly 10 times the above-ground equivalent. For a country with millions of miles of line, the national bill is in the trillions. But here's the part that reframes the whole argument. Underground lines don't mean no outages, they mean different outages. Above-ground lines fail constantly from storms, ice, and falling trees, but they can be repaired in hours. Underground faults are rare but take days to locate and fix. Utilities have used this fact for decades as a reason to do nothing, but no other rich country has accepted that trade-off. And storms are getting worse. In 2026, every serious hurricane, ice storm, or wildfire season produces the same ritual. Millions of Americans without power for days, linemen flown in from other states, the same wooden infrastructure failing in the same predictable ways. Other countries watch this and genuinely do not understand why it keeps happening. There's also a wildfire dimension that has redrawn the political map. In California, above-ground lines have been directly linked to multiple catastrophic fires, sparked by lines swaying into vegetation. Pacific Gas and Electric was found criminally responsible for a fire that destroyed an entire town. And yet, even now, California's full undergrounding timeline stretches decades into the future. The political economy is genuinely strange. Undergrounding is popular with the public. Polls consistently show Americans want it. But the decision lives inside a maze of municipal governments, state utility commissions, private investor-owned utilities, and rural cooperatives, all with different incentives, none with a mandate to act on a national timeline. Compare that to South Korea. Seoul buried virtually all of its urban distribution lines across a coordinated national program, starting in the 1990s. The central government set the mandate, the state utility executed it, and within 15 years, the skyline was clean. That kind of top-down coherence is structurally almost impossible in the American system. There are American success stories, and they reveal exactly how narrow the path is. Virtually every new master-planned community built since the 1980s, Celebration in Florida, the Woodlands in Texas, buried utilities from day one. Because when you start from scratch, the cost is marginal. It's retrofitting that breaks the bank, and America is almost all retrofit. But here's what gets lost in the cost debate: what above-ground lines actually cost in aggregate. Americans lost an estimated $70 billion in economic damage from power outages in a single recent storm season. Insurance claims, spoiled food, generator fuel, lost business, repeated compounding every year. The buried line math looks very different across a 30-year horizon. And there's an aesthetic cost that rarely makes the spreadsheet. American streets carry a visual weight that no other developed country tolerates. The poles, the transformers, the guy wires, the cable spaghetti, they make every neighborhood look slightly provisional, like the wiring job was always meant to be temporary and just never got cleaned up. In 2026, a handful of states have accelerated underground programs: Florida, Louisiana, parts of California, driven entirely by hurricane damage liability, not aesthetics or principle. The irony is that the catastrophes Americans keep living through are the only mechanism pushing the infrastructure in the direction every other country reached by policy decades ago. So here's the honest answer to why American power lines are still above ground. It's not ignorance, and it's not poverty. It's a system that locks in yesterday's cheapest decision and distributes the cost of that decision invisibly across millions of people over decades. Every other rich country found a moment to break the lock. America keeps waiting for a bigger storm. If this made you see your street differently, subscribe. This channel is built entirely around those hidden reasons the American built environment looks the way it does. Next, we're going into why American roads are so much wider than roads anywhere else in the world, and the surprisingly violent history behind that choice.